It's talk time now. Since the inception of constituency projects in Nigeria, there have been misconceptions, misinterpretations and judgment of the constituency project administration.
Now this and indeed some other factors have painted the hallowed chambers of the National Assembly in real bad light. Secretary to the government of the Federation, Babachir Lawal, recently hinted that it would not be possible to fund the constituency projects of the National Assembly members as contained in the 2016 budget because of paucity of funds. But first, let's beam our searchlight on what constituency projects are.
Now, constituency projects are usually nominated by members of the National Assembly for their constituencies, and they are projects conceptualized and executed on behalf of legislators in their respective constituencies by contractors, especially by ministries, departments, and government agencies.
Now, several theories abound on how it was introduced into the Nigerian political lexicon. Former Senator Olorunimbe Mamora claimed that it was the Lagos State House of Assembly that gave Nigerians the novel concept while he was in the State House of Assembly. According to Senator Aline Dume, as of 2013, a total sum of 900 billion naira was appropriated for constituency projects for 109 senators and 360 members of the House of Reps since 2004.
And in 2016 budget, a total of 60 billion naira was set aside for constituency projects for the Senate and 40 billion naira for the House of Representatives. But this allocation has also been a source of controversy in the House of Representatives currently, as everyone has an idea of.
Honorable Abdul Mumin Jibrin alleged that Speaker Yakubu Dogara had allocated projects worth 4 billion naira to his constituency, leaving 359 other members of the lower house to share the remaining 36 billion naira out of 40 billion unilaterally inserted in the budget. Okay, at this point, we really should bring in our guest, rights activist and senior advocate of Nigeria. Well, no, actually, no.
We'll be expecting him to join us. We're referring to Femi Falana to say something on this, certainly, as we get along on the program. Now, the issue of...
Okay, but of course, our guest here in the studio is Babatunde Ogala. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Okay, no constituency projects, no dividends of democracy. That's how some lawmakers actually describe this, issue that has, been a source of concern for many Nigerians.
Well, incidentally, I think it's interesting that I just read Senator Mamora saying Lagos State House of Assembly, of which I subsequently became a member in 2007. Was the first to come up with a novel constituency project law. I recall in the year 2000 or thereabout, Lagos State House of Assembly did pass a law which they called the Constituency Project Law, which was purported to reserve 15% of the budget for capital expenditure in a year for projects to be nominated by the State Houses of Assembly. The then governor of the state, Senator Bola Tinubu, withheld his assent to the passage of to making that bill a law, and if I also recall, the House of Assembly also overrode his veto. What is most interesting? I was the lawyer that took the Lagos State House of Assembly to court.
Okay.
I took the Lagos State House of Assembly to court to challenge the propriety of that law. Then I didn't know I was going to be a member of that house. And the court in its wisdom granted us an injunction restraining the house, the governor and the house from implementing that law. Until that law has not been implemented, because that ruling was not appealed against, and I think I would say efficiently that was the end of that law in Lagos State. At least in my days in the House of Assembly, there was, I was there for 4 years, and I wouldn't say it was ever implemented.
What was wrong with that law?
You see, look, our argument at that time was that this is an executive function. The legislator cannot undertake executive functions. where the legislator decides in its own wisdom or otherwise to sit down in the allo chambers where they are certainly supposed to scrutinize the budget proposals and start nominating projects and include in that budget. For me, it is outside their functions. What is the proper thing to do? And that is why I blame the executive too, a lot of the time. You see, there should be a synergy. Because first and foremost, the legislator, other than being perceived just as a lawmaker, is a representative of the people. He represents, that is his primary responsibility in government, is to go and represent the interest of his constituents. He takes their expectations to the government. He is one who ought to understand their needs. Is the face of that constituency. So what is the ideal thing to do? The executive in itself is not getting it right by still thinking we are sometimes maybe the military mentality, where you just sit down. Because I've heard when I was a member of the House, I recall the commissioner telling me that he knows what the constituents will need. No, you cannot know. I'm the one they know. I'm the one they interface with. I'm the one who has a constituency office where they come. I'm the one who campaign to them. I'm the one who they give a mandate. The only people that are given mandates in a democratic setting are the elected people. A commissioner, a minister has no mandate of anybody. He's at best an assistant of the president or governor. He's an aide. So what I'm saying here is what the executive ought to do and the legislature, there should be a meeting of minds. As Lagos adopted a model subsequently, I think when I got the Fashla, where when it is time for budgetary process, perhaps media, you get the legislators and ask them to send in their inputs into what the expectations of the constituency are. You give guidelines. For the federal government, for instance, you let them know that, look, these are things that are on the exclusive list, these are things that are on the concurrent list. You will not go to residual, like I hear building of town halls, primary schools being included. It also shows ignorance of our legislators. So you put it there, everybody comes. We know everything may not be accommodated at once, but at least you will sit down together and say, look, for what is what, let us spread this over 3-4 years. So every legislator who is a representative of his constituents can go back to them. If I, for instance, when I was there, we were able to get funds for stormwater, even from the federal government. I mean, the Commissioner for Environment and I visited things that ought to be in his budget. And that was the approach we adopted. So the governor identifies the project, you identify them, say, okay, hello, 360 House of Reps members, 109 senators, hello, this is what we have. We will take A, B, and C here this year. Lagos State, who says a legislator representing Riverine Lagos cannot even collectively come and say, look, come and dredge and boil our waters so that we can have sea transportation. Okay. It is a constituency project. But those on the highways can say, look, Ikorodu Road, these are federal highways. My needs are pedestrian bridges. These are projects you can attract. But let the executive create that platform. In Lagos, there's something they call executive legislative party, where the executive and the legislators sit down over 3 days and identify the direction that the state wants to go, identify the projects they want to embark on, and sometimes include members of the National Assembly. That way, it was seamless.
Okay, now let's have a basic understanding from the inception now. What was the argument for the introduction of constituency funds for legislators in the first place? What was the argument?
Well, the argument, it's those who introduce it that will be able to explain.
Okay. But they certainly would have...
I guess it is coming from perhaps the reasoning I have just set down, that we represent these people. We ought to know what their needs are. Perhaps they had to go the extreme because the executive was also not taking that into account. So for me, it's about both sides having a synergy, especially the executive. For the legislator to start, like I hear, I mean, when you, in the intro, you talked about nominating contractors. That is a no. What is your business? That is strictly executive function that should go through a process, including a procurement process. So you cannot go through a procurement process and say you are nominating a contractor.
Okay. Rights
handling of
activist,
funds.
let's even, shed more light on this. Rights activist and senior advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana, says the unilateral introduction of constituency projects into the country's political life is totally illegal and unconstitutional.
Well, the controversy trailing the move to scrap constituency projects is further fueled by arguments between former Lagos State Governor Babatunde Fashola, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, and members of the House of Representatives. The lawmakers say Fashola and Osinbajo had encouraged the initiative while they served in Lagos State and should not in any way oppose the initiative.
Okay, you just shook your head.
I think the legislators got it all wrong. Like I said, I can authoritatively speak on that. I was a member of the Lagos State House of Assembly, and when the constituency project bill was passed in Lagos State, albeit without the assent of the governor, I was the counsel that went to court and had it buried. So it is not true that Osinbajo and Fashola. Osinbajo was Attorney General when the governor refused to assent to that bill. So ostensibly must have advised against it. So it could not be said because it was the House of Assembly overrode the veto of the governor and invoked his tutor's power to pass it. Right. Senator Mamora was then Speaker of the Lagos State Assembly. And in the Fashola administration, of which I was also a part, I was in the House, that never arose. But what Fashola did, like I said, is a synergy. They were having executive, legislative balance.
The whole idea of constituency projects and all of that, is it a reflection of the failure, like you broached on, the failure on the part of the executive? And then you want to ask, what is the role of the local government, the role of the council, offices and all of that in providing the so-called constituency projects? And of course, the lobbies, which is really not the norm in this part of the world. Isn't that, shouldn't this constituency projects be driven by these aspects of
forget
governance?
The nomenclature constituency projects. That is just a matter of nomenclature and semantics. What is the idea? The idea is, as a legislature, I believe I should bring what we now call dividends of democracy, whatever that means. I'll still ask that question. That I should bring at least government presence. Because don't forget, our case is peculiar. Unlike the other jurisdictions where we copy from, where things they are almost on auto. This morning, I think I was listening to your program when they were talking about water before I left home. And we're talking, in the US, I can't think of a community that will be thinking of how to get water. So the needs are different. The expectations. We're talking about roads. I'm not too sure those are things they talk about in those parts, or health, education. Those are things
they are taken for granted
that they seem to have conquered. So our needs are peculiar. But what it connotes is, I'm saying, look, in the totality of all of this, my constituency should also have a feel of the government. My constituency should have some infrastructural investment.
Isn't that where you should, sponsor bills that
become
laws at the end of the day? Draw those projects to your
It's not about bills. Do I need to go and sit down and make a law and say the government must build one road in the Ikeja constituency every year, or in every constituency every year? This is not a matter of bills. It's a matter of responsible good governance, subject to availability of resources. Because we mustn't lose sight of that. Our country is 50 years behind, if not more, behind its actual potentials. Because like we talked about water now, I'm not too sure in UK they have talked about communities not having water in the past 100 years. I'm not too sure they will be in Europe. Those are my thoughts. So it's not about making bills. It's about the synergy between the executive and the legislature.
Okay.
So that in making a budget, in making the development plans, everybody is on the same page.
All right. Now let's get to information we're reeling out earlier on. Now, the House of Reps argued that the constituency projects have helped many rural communities in Nigeria that would never have known about the existence of the federal government, let alone benefiting from budgets. Now, projects such as solar-powered boreholes, hand pumps, school infrastructure, dispensaries, skilled acquisition centers, poverty alleviation, and lots more are done yearly, but then not well managed in most cases. So that brings us to the question. Let us assume, because, okay, it's not even an assumption, constituency projects are ongoing, at least there are locations for them at the National Assembly. What are the specifications? When a project is identified, what is supposed to be the ideal process of executing such projects?
You know, like I said, there are laws guiding how projects are executed. First and foremost, the Public Procurement Act, a nomination of contractors. If it has been appropriated for by, I mean, you said for, I mean, I saw the list that was railed out, albeit almost all of it are non-federal government functions. I mean, I still see the solar power panels in Magodo. What is the business of the federal government inside Magodo Estate? I mean, again, the abuses over time. Like Femi said, illegal, unconstitutional. What they ought to do is identify these projects. Where, I mean, like I said, they should come at the preparatory stage of the budget. Everybody has an input. There is an understanding. This is what we can accommodate. These are within the executive competence of the federal government. Like I keep referring to the Constitution. You don't tell the federal government to go and build primary health care center or handballs and all of that. Those are not its business. Primary health care, those are not its business.
So what you're saying is that the law allows for legislators to actually make inputs at the budgeting level.
Representatives of the people.
Is that what may have led to the whole idea of padding and what have you?
Like I had said, it is about the executive and the legislature not being on the same page all the while.
Then does it really bring to the fore again the argument that there is a need for a proper restructuring of this federation so that governance is from bottom up and not the other way around?
I think
because what some of these legislators' argument, is that there's no way, just like you said, the executive in Abuja, for example, will not understand what is going on with the person in Okokomaiko.
Yes.
And it will take a legislator or but somebody at that level to understand what their demands or their requirements are and actually push it.
Yes. No, but I think that is settled. The issue of federalism. I'm a very, very, very strong advocate of federalism. And federalism in every sense of the word. The word restructuring, well, I don't know what restructuring means sometimes because it's used very, very loosely by different commentators. Some have said, let's go back to regional government. Let's go back to parliamentary. I mean, I will simply say there is need for us to have federalism in the true sense of the word, where the federating units are strong as they can be and donate part of their powers to the federal government. Not the federal government or the federal government taking most of the powers and giving out some of it. They should donate to the federal unit to do it, which includes fiscal, talked about state police, electoral reforms. It's the totality of the gambit of it. I believe very, very strongly that there is need for us to. I know I'm not on the argument of number of states, system of government, and what have you. Because for me, the number of states, you won't believe that I think is Ohio or so. One of the very smallest states, not Ohio now, trying to remember. In the US, has as much as 92 counties, even far more than a state like California or Texas. Everybody according to his needs and ability. You are not keeping one, holding one down for the other to catch up. No. Let everybody control their resources. The agitation about oil, I believe, and I believe very strongly, that every state in this country can sustain itself. But of course, the states have become lazy, all waiting for handouts from the federal government, agitation in the South-South. Where the South take its oil like Texas has its oil? But Texas, that doesn't make it richer than the California.
So would you say then that the whole, the idea of the
world.
constitutional or constituency projects is only a symptom of a deeper problem?
No,
and will this true federalism solve that problem?
Look, constituency project, honestly, for me, is a non-issue. It's a function of operators of the system not understanding what they're doing. Of course, it's also corruption tainted. It's also corruption tainted. We know some. I mean, you nominate a project, and you are the one who wants to nominate the contractor. You want to recommend. It's corruption. I hear a couple of days back that the EFCC is about probing to about 200 members of the National Assembly who collected money. Hey, for such persons, hey, hell no. Collect money, you nominate contractors, you be the executioner. It is not your function. It is strictly executive. And I will blame the executive that even allowed that to happen, that did not put his foot down. It's also culpable, you know. So for me, that is not the issue. When we have people, look, responsible governance has no two names. It doesn't have two names. If you have good governance, you have good governance. Look, our problem as a nation is largely, people have said the presidential system is too expensive. Our problem is corruption, is attitudinal. What is expensive in the presidential system? What they call the emoluments of National Assembly members that people state out, other than their salaries, which have been prescribed by law, and perhaps the running costs, the rest is corruption. So the problem is with us as a people. It is not our systems. If you sit down, look, what is corruption? Deeply ingrained in all of us. Somebody calls you, he wants this assistance, he wants that assistance. He's asking you to bend the rules for him. I got a call a couple of days back. Somebody was asking me, somebody wants to introduce somebody to a judge. I said, for what? He said, what are you saying? Corruption. The person subsequently abused me because I declined. He said, I'm not a good person. I said, fine, if that makes me a bad person, it makes me a bad person. You come back from office, people are saying, who did he help when he was there? Help in what sense?
Isn't that because the system itself seems to have failed a lot of people, that they are left behind?
Look, and they have no choice. When we talk about the system, who is the system?
And they have no choice than to ask for such favors.
Forget about favors from government officials. How about in religious institutions? Is it that the churches have failed, that people get into church positions and all they think is about money? Is it the system that will make somebody look at me? And when I was in the house, I still had the offers of doctorate degrees up to last month. Doctorate degrees for what? Every idiot now has a doctorate degree. Every idiot is a title chief in Nigeria. What is qualifying us for all that? All these are products of corruption. You go to office, because you are in office, you are suddenly superhuman. Where did you expect you to fund the new lifestyle the system is imposing on you? From the church, which suddenly makes you the chief guest of honor, chairman of this, chairman of that, chief donor, father of the day. I joke among my friends. I said, I know those who cannot be chairmen at my children's wedding. I know. They must be role models. Not because of what they want to give, not because of presents. I know those who cannot be, and I know those who can be. So it is a deeper problem that is inherent in almost all of us. Those who hold public offices, they don't come from the moon. They are not a special breed. You take them from the academia, you call them bureaucrats, you bring them from overseas. When they get here, they get involved and consumed by corruption. So it is deep in us. It is about us as a people. It is about our orientation as a people. That is what we need to readdress. Lee Kuan Yew said, I was privileged to have listened to it, to fix Singapore. In 2007, I was in Singapore. So they addressed 3 issues: corruption, and corruption. And he told us how they went about changing the orientation of the people, and that the biggest collateral for a Singaporean today is its integrity.
That's interesting.
Not the number of houses, not certificates of occupancy, not how much you have in the bank or how good looking you are.
We look forward to having that in Nigeria
don't
someday.
blush. Don't blush. Don't blush. I can see the blush coming up. No, what am I saying?
No, I didn't take that person.
All right, now let's
seriously,
attempt to look at
Yes.
the process that the constituency has to follow, since it is not permanently structured to a particular style. It's a short cycle, let me say. Now, lawmakers submit a list of projects they desire. That's the stage of conception. Yes. And then the list is submitted jointly by the National Assembly to be included in the budget.
Yeah.
Now, the suggested projects, when approved, are then processed and implemented by government ministries, departments, and parastatals through private contractors who sometimes are suggested by the lawmakers.
But then the monitoring of these projects remain a major problem. There are records that some of these projects are not implemented, which our guest Babatunde Ogala actually mentioned earlier. Allegations that some state legislators, actually given these funds and they're not used for what...
Whichever legislator collected funds should face his day in courts. That is gross misconduct as a legislator. It is criminal in nature. Whatever executive office holder, be it minister, PAMSEC, DG of MDA, that handed funds to a legislator should have his day in courts. He has committed criminal offenses by breach of the Public Procurement Act, which prescribes processes. And whoever paid out those funds to the legislator for work not done, or indeed advance payment that did not go through due process, they all are liable and should have their days before the courts.
Okay, now the issue of we heard Femi Falana earlier on saying that the issue of constituency projects is totally unconstitutional.
It is unconstitutional.
And we know that the judiciary, for instance, the third arm of government, is there to watch. And based on the principles of checks and balances, anything that is unconstitutional, the judiciary is supposed to wade in one way or the other. But we don't see this happening in this case.
No, the judiciary will not just wake up from its leave its busy schedule and start going to the marketplace to be shopping for litigation to adjudicate upon. Issues have to be brought to the judiciary. I gave you the example of the Constituency Project Law in Lagos State in the year 2000. When it was promulgated, I and a couple of friends, without pressure from anybody, they sat down and we said, look, this is not right. I think I called Shegun Mayegun, Dr. Mimosha Idemi, and we sat down in my office. We looked at the law. I was a lawyer. They were just my co-activists at the time. We were all in the then Democratic Vanguard coming out of Nadeco. And we looked at the law and we said, look, in this case, do we think this is right? We agreed it was not right. Okay, what do? We go to court. Do we have the local standard to go to court? We also looked at the law, and in our opinion, we thought we had the locals to go to the court. And we took the matter to court, by originating summons, which is for the court to determine a question of law. The Lagos State House of Assembly, back then, I think employed Chief Michael Zekomes here, was the counsel. I was counsel on the other side. He first came with challenging our locals. We settled that. We had locals. And we got this injunction restraining the governor of Lagos State was also a defendant in the case, and the Attorney General, as well as the House of Assembly. So we as citizens, private citizens, please mark my words, we were not paid a dime for this. I offered my services free. People might insinuate. When I got to the house, some people raised it, and I told them, oh, some people were like, oh, that's the man who did this.
Okay, so beyond
I told my colleagues at that time that I will do it again, and I will still do it again.
Okay, so beyond getting this restraint from the court, should the idea of constituency projects, before I bite it, should it just be scrapped? Because it seems to be open to corruption. Okay,
it is not about scrapping. It is illegal and unlawful. So you don't even scrap what ought not to be.
In the eyes of the law, it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
But it's been going on.
That's what we are, because of this complicity of the executive and the legislature. It's complicity by those who have invested our mandate and are trusting. They are breaching the trust we have invested in them by doing what is unconstitutional. And that is why I said, we the private citizens should, I mean, other than saying the executive should, even go and try it in the courts. Let's put it through a judicial integrity test. Complicity of the executive and the legislature. It's complicity by those who have invested our mandate and are trusting. They are breaching the trust we have invested in them by doing what is unconstitutional. And that is why I said, we the private citizens should, I mean, other than saying the executive should, even go and try it in the courts. Let's put it through a judicial integrity test. If the legislature has the powers to do it. For me, in my opinion, they don't have such powers.
So how can people in the rural area, the fish seller, how can they feel governance?
Look, there are three tiers of government. There is the federal, state, and local government. If we run our country well, it's about the issue of governance. It's not about the issue of constituency project. How? Okay, the last 16 or so years that has been practiced, how has it impacted on anybody? Pick any local government in Lagos. Okay, you see one odd borehole somewhere, especially if you go outside Lagos, you see these boreholes that never dispense water. I mean, some jaja. This morning we were watching the one in somewhere in Abuja now, Abaji. Okay, it was on your sister station that I was watching it, Abaji, where there is an 80 million gigantic uncompleted project since 2012. So that is not how. If the local government is doing its functions, the state government is carrying out its functions, and the federal constitution concentrates on also its core duties. The Constitution has spelled out the functions of every tier of government, as well as every arm of government. So let each and every one do its bit. If the local government is allowed to work, and we have competent hands, because I must tell you, the local government we've almost made like a dumping ground for all manner of characters, and it's almost happening to the legislature too. The legislature too is becoming a dumping ground for all manner of, I mean, that's why you look at the quality of legislators, you look at the quality of people in the executive, and you wonder how some people got into the legislature. So until we get to allow every system, have you wondered, we practice the American system of government. President Obama, as president, there are state governors, and there are mayors in the counties. Who even talks about, do you notice the difference when you move around? There's state police, there's the local police, and there's the federal police. And they all work seamlessly. So until we allow our system to run, until the state government stops bothering itself with markets, which is a local government function, until it starts bothering itself with collecting TV, wanting to get involved with TV license, the 14 items that are the local government, they are already there. For the state, it is there. The ones that are exclusive, they are there. And the ones that are residual, that are not mentioned here and there, Federal Ministry of Transport, what's the business of federal government with transportation? It's on the residual list.
Very interesting
Physical
questions
planning.
there.
We can go on and on. Land tenure. We can go on and on.
And, I don't know if you're talking about the Constitution because you're a lawyer. And indeed, there's the tendency to, set aside what the Constitution recommends by so many people at the different levels of government to implement what they, particularly as individuals, want to implement. I mean, how would you react to President Buhari's, alleged intention to ask for more powers to be able to provide the benefits of governance to Nigerians? What would you say
Buhari,
to that?
Well, even though it's not been made official,
Yes.
but it's been trending, it's been misinterpreted, mischief has come into it. Some have called it emergency powers. Unfortunately, our press too has been extremely lazy. I mean, I say that with all respect. Extremely lazy and just flew with uninformed comments by saying is requesting for
not that,
emergency
well,
powers.
at least we have not said
What?
that here.
No,
What
I said
we
the
are
press,
saying,
please, no.
okay,
Mark
yeah,
my
yeah.
words.
I know, I understand you,
Mark my words.
that
So
he
what we are
plans
saying
to
here,
do that.
What he plans to do, from my understanding, is simply an abridgment of certain powers. And I will give examples. There are 7 items on the list as reported, because it's not official. No official of government has said there is such a plan. But as reported, and now these 7 items have been identified. It says, look, to accelerate development, a budget has been passed. We need to inflate the economy by pumping funds into infrastructural development. And it says the Public Procurement Act prescribes a process that takes about 6 months. Hey, a budget was passed in May. 6 months is already November. So it says, for 1 year, let us abridge this. We are in a period of economic emergency. He has not said, let us stop following process. Let us abridge the time. He talks about universal basic education. That we have well over 60 billion funds lying idle that ought to be deployed to education. The states, by law, are supposed to provide 50% counterpart funding.
Counterpart funds. Yeah.
As it is today, no state is applying for this money. The money is lying idle. And why are the states not doing so? Because they cannot afford 50% counterpart funding. Please, let us abridge it for them to provide 10% counterpart funding so that we move on. I mean, these are states that can't pay salary. So imagine 60 billion lying idle that is now brought forward that they can access to, if nothing else, take care of their teacher salaries. These are things that will reflect the economy. It talks about ease of doing business, the Corporate Affairs Commission, and for the foreign direct investment, issuance of visas and all of that. I mean, these are only fair that we need at a time. These are only fair things that we need at a time like this, that the economy has to be energized. We have this money lying fallow. We want to pump it into the economy. But the law as it is, which were made for normal circumstances, when things were normal and running seamlessly.
Because right now things are not normal.
We're not in a recession. Right now, things are not normal. We are in September already. And it says, let us give it a trial for 1 year. A trial period of 1 year.
Okay.
See how it works out. If it doesn't, the National Assembly does not have to renew it after 1 year. So let's give it a trial period. So I personally do not. But again, people have said he wants emergency powers. He will be draconian. Has the man said, give me powers to detain people at my own without trial? Has he said, let me give me powers to convict? He has said, let us just abridge. He has not in any way said, let us dispense with any process.
All right, Babatunde Ogala, thank you very much for joining us right now, for giving us enlightenment into some of these areas we've been talking about. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Now, this is where we come to the end of today's edition of TVC Breakfast. We've talked about a plethora of issues this morning, but certainly one thing that we have to draw your attention to is the warnings by NIMET and other agencies that are warning, that are watching the weather, giving you a forecast as to the rain and so on.
Indeed.
So let's all work hand in hand with all these agencies and for ourselves too, to see how we don't fall victims of fraud. And
Absolutely. So be more responsible. Dispose of your garbage responsibly. That will definitely reduce the risk factor. Thank you so much.
I am Mike Okwache.
And I am Ngozi Alebu. Have a great day.